Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Well, all show, let's talk about local predictions because the session is just right around the corner. You know them, you love them, you read them in the Post. Nic Garcia, good to see you.
Good to see you, John. And
nobody gets the Denver Business Journal, but if it ended up on your doorstep by accident, it would be Ed Sealover that would catch your attention.
Always good to see you, John.
Actually, I could rip on both papers. I do know that ever since I've been a columnist for the Denver Post, its circulation has just lived. So
I see the emails. I see the comments.
You see the comments. I'm a good generator of hate comments. All right. Let me put out my prediction for this upcoming session with total progressive control of both houses and the governor's office. My worry is that they're not going to overreach, the Democrats. And if they don't overreach, that's a symbol to me that they're actually disciplined, and I will be scared. So tell me, what do you see coming out of the box starting next week?
I don't think the overreach is going to be as big as a lot of people are predicting for a couple of reasons. One, the memories of 2013 are still a little fresh in people's minds. You know, you overreach, you lose two people in unprecedented recall elections. Three, really, yes, that's a good point.
You lost 10% of the Senate over those gun votes.
People don't forget that. The other reason is this. While the House has an enormous Democratic advantage, 41 Democrats, 24 Republicans, and a lot of very liberal newcomers to the House, the Senate is only divided 19-16, and you can literally pick out the people who will be kind of the moderating influences. Leroy Garcia, the Senate president, is one of them. Angela Williams, who heads up the Business Committee over there. Rachel Zenzinger, who's on the Joint Budget Committee. All three are viewed as people who are looking for compromise and looking to pass consensus bills. I think that will slow the overreach as well.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, look, the Republicans know they aren't going to be able to drive the big conversations. That's out the window. But they are going to be able to make a lot of this legislation that they've been pushing back against for several years a little bit more appetizing for their base, right? We're going to see those Republicans like Kevin Priola work with someone like Rachel Zenzinger, a Democrat, on bills to make sure that you have a bipartisan.
Put some meat on those bones. What kind of bills?
Sure. I mean, I think you're going to see, if we want to keep it in the realm of business, the Family Paid Leave Act, right? I think you're going to see Republicans put forth their own ideas to try to make them work for businesses. I know that Faith Winter, who has run this bill, who just won a seat in the Senate, she's working with Angela Williams to make sure that the business community is coming on board with this stuff, to make it actually work for both employees and employers. Whether that happens or not is yet to be seen, but the bipartisan spirit, the goodwill is there, at least on opening day.
On opening day. Great, but I'm also saying even the idea of getting the act through, you know, Democrats can do what they want. It is their show.
Absolutely.
They don't need anybody except for appearance sake. You know, there'll be a red flag bill. The question is, what will it look like? Will it actually have some due process, unlike the one that was introduced last year, and have some protections to make sure people have a right to defend themselves before they're disarmed? That will definitely go through. I'm really curious about oil and gas as well, because even though the voters said no to a moratorium, to a fracking ban, I don't know if these guys can stop themselves from leaving it alone.
And I think you're going to see some really far-reaching regulations come out. We've heard about a 6-month moratorium on statewide oil and gas drilling. We've heard about 2,000 foot.
Stop there for a second. A 6-month moratorium on oil and gas drilling. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that will be accompanied by a 6-month moratorium on taking oil and gas tax payments, or a 6-month moratorium on income taxes from the people who work on those places.
Sounds like you and Senator Cook had a conversation recently.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, those kind of things. Or instead of the 2,500-foot setback that was rejected in November, a 2,000-foot setback. But I mention those because we've also heard House Speaker Casey Becker say, look, I don't like the idea of a moratorium or of a 2,000-foot setback. I think we need to do more things that are possibly consensus building, but possibly do things that focus more on big picture public health and safety, on some local regulations such as odor and noise, but not necessarily absolute regulations. So I think in that area even, you're already seeing the Republican influence, not in that Republicans will vote for anything that goes forward, but that just the influence may stop the biggest changes from getting through.
Yeah, I mean, the amendment or the ballot measure that voters rejected was a blunt tool, right? I don't think any lawmaker or Governor Polis, for that matter, wants something that draconian. I think they're going to see a lot of.
Let me throw the BS flag on that
But I think we're going to see a lot of nuance.
All right,
I think
hang
we're
on a
going to
second.
have a lot of nuanced conversations.
The governor-elect, who 4 years ago wanted the exact same ban,
But it wasn't the exact same thing.
But only 2,000, not 20,
Plus
25
property right ownerships, and that's the thing that a lot of
hang
people
on a
forget.
second. But the point being, the difference in moratorium, the difference in the setback was a whopping 500 feet.
Sure.
So, you know, I think Jared has come to his senses and realizes how devastating this would be to the economy now that it is going to be on his watch. And I also think he understands the chances of a recession. You know, Colorado is not recession-proof either. He's got to be thinking about that as well. But to say that there's middle ground. Let's remember our governor did push for a fracking ban.
Oh, I'm not forgetting that at all. What I am arguing, though, is that it's going to be a lot more nuanced of a conversation. I mean, again, we heard Casey Becker, the event Ed's moderated on Thursday morning, talk about how she wants to take into consideration water quality, air quality. It's not, the pollution just doesn't stop if there's 2,500 feet between you and a well, right? That's not what happens. So they want to take on a more holistic, more nuanced approach to this issue than just.
I think the word you're looking for is
feet.
groovy. I think they're looking for a more
There's
nuanced, holistic, groovy
all right.
way to bring in a new regulatory state. Colorado already has the most regulations on oil and gas drilling in the country, but that's still not going to be enough, even though voters voted it down. What do you think the end compromise is going to compromise? What are they going to do to us at the end of this?
I think in the end, you're going to have a little bit of resetting about the parameters that the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission decides where to drill on, that public health and safety are going to be more of a factor. And that's whether it's the legislature that decides that or a court decides it, because that case is sitting out there for this Colorado Supreme Court to decide right now. And I think you're going to see a little bit more in the local regulatory realm. I'm not sure exactly where that compromise is going to come down, if it's a compromise or if it's just you're going to take this and like it. But I think those are the two areas you're going to see.
My sense is Hick loved when there was a split legislature.
Oh, yeah.
When there wasn't a split legislature in 2013, all these crazy bills came through. He didn't veto a single one of them. 3 people got kicked out of the Senate over the gun laws. I'm wondering if Jared is going to have the same issue, in that if there's one person on the hot seat in all of this, it's got to be the president of the Senate. I mean,
yeah,
I think everyone is looking for him to be the safety valve. Is he up for that?
I think he is, but I think you had Ted Trimple on this show, a few weeks ago. He has said that he thinks Polis is going to be a little bit more conservative than people give him credit to. Other people who are close to Polis that I've spoken to also say the same things. Just watch and wait and see how Polis is actually a moderating factor on the General Assembly. Having said all of that, I absolutely think a lot of pressure is going to be on Senate President Garcia's shoulders to not just stand up for business, but also small town Colorado. He's from Pueblo, rural Colorado, and to see how Polis and Casey Becker work together, that's going to be the thing I'm most interested in watching, to see how the 3 of them come together to create legislation that everyone can get behind.
I have a hard time seeing the House not pushing for huge change. I mean, I just don't see them not flying things over to the Senate constantly. So craziness will happen in the House, and we'll see how much it gets moderated in the Senate. I think you're right with Polis on a couple things, in that he surprises you on issues. that he's been good on corporate taxes. He's listened to Art Laffer. He understands cryptocurrencies. He understands the marketplace in some areas and not in others. What's going to happen on our zero emissions?
That is actually really out of the legislature's hands at this point. But that is really going to be decided by the Colorado Air Quality Control Commission. So there's going to be a 3-month process, 3 to 4 month process now of taking input on whether we should have a minimum number of zero emissions vehicles that are sold in any given year, starting in about 2025 or so. But unless the legislature decides to get in and either order that number or take it out of the hands of the Air Quality Control Commission, which is not going to happen with the Democratic legislature, I don't know that that's going to be a huge legislative issue.
Well, principle counts, and I think for those not following it at home on the scorecard, when Hickenlooper put in these, decided to adopt California standards, he did so by going around the legislature. I don't know if he has the authority to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lawsuit to find out. It might be moot because even if you find out he doesn't have the authority, I don't see this legislature going back to the old standards, do you?
Probably not. I mean, frankly, no. I mean, look, these folks who are elected feel they have a mandate on a lot of different issues, including climate change. I mean, I think we heard Casey Becker say climate change 3 or 4 times this Thursday morning in front of the Denver Chamber of Commerce. This is something that's on her mind. This is on the mind of a lot of Democrats, especially in the House.
It's interesting. Voters voted for Democrats, but on the issues, they voted like Coloradans. They turned down state tax increases. They turned down a fracking ban. And so this is where I know every politician who's elected says, I have a mandate. I'm not certain if there's that mandate.
And I think this is where it's going to create some of the biggest discussion and debate because people don't know where to go, specifically on the issues of transportation funding and education funding, because voters rejected plans to increase both of those. Hearing people talk about transportation funding, it's either, I don't know, let's go back to what we were trying to do last year, or I don't know, let's try to get together a new group to come up with a better sales tax hike.
I remember during the election pushing, Governor Polis and candidate Polis on what was he going to do different than what they had just done, and well, I'm still waiting for an answer. So I do think this is going to be the biggest question for Democrats to answer is how are they going to do what they want to do given the reality of the constraints of the budget?
And how are we going to give health care for all, free K kindergarten, and zero emissions on complete renewable energy? And all that costs nothing. Don't give me that.
I don't know. I just wanted to do that good look there.
That's a really good look.
So,
all right, what's the surprise going to be for the session? Then we'll wrap it up.
The surprise of the session is I think you're going to find bipartisan compromise on the issue of some sort of affordable housing bills. I think this is something that Republicans and Democrats are both hearing.
Big surprise.
Immigration, where the liberals push Jared Polis on some sort of sanctuary state bill. He said he wouldn't sign it. I think they're going to push for it. We'll see what happens.
Fascinating. Thank you much. Stay tuned.